How much does original hardware really matter in 2025? And I guess that really depends on who you ask. Because if you ask someone who was born in the year 2000, they're going to have a completely different vantage point on the evolution of video game hardware. Because if you think about it, if they were born in 2000, by the time they were able or old enough to reasonably play video games, it was probably somewhere during the PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360 era. That was probably their heyday. And at that point, that was the time where the improvements and advancements in video game hardware started to become very marginal, right? Because if you think about it, in the case of the PlayStation, we've been playing the same games from PlayStation, from Sony, for decades now. Because some of the same games that were released on the PlayStation 2 were released on the PlayStation 3 and then released on the PlayStation 4. And in some cases, we even got some of those same games on the PlayStation 5. So Sony hasn't really done us many favors when it comes to showcasing their evolution in gaming. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some PlayStation games that completely blow your mind in terms of what they've been able to do, especially on the PlayStation 5. But my main point is for a person that was born in 2000 and started playing games in 2010, they have not had much of a differentiated experience from a gaming hardware perspective, at least not to the same degree of someone who may have been born, say, in the 70s. If you were someone who grew up and was born during the era of Atari, the era of Nintendo, the era of the Master System, if you grew up in that era, you were probably blown away by the advancements that were made in gaming, just going from the 70s probably up to the mid 90s. Being able to go from 2D 8-bit gaming, then to 16-bit, then to 32-bit, and then to straight up 3D gaming on consoles like the N64 and the Sony PlayStation, you got to see way more of an evolution in video gaming than a person who was born in the 2000s. And I think that that truly has a major impact on how you view hardware. And I think that's a big part of the reason why you see more older folks, folks who grew up in the fourth generation of gaming and the third and the fifth generation of gaming. I think this is why you see that group of people have so much of a stronger affinity for retro games than you probably do in that younger age group. And let's be honest, again, if you were born in 2000, you're probably around 25 right now. So you're not really focused on video games. You're probably focused on trying to get a job, establish your career, perhaps establish a relationship. You're just starting to figure out what adulting actually means. You're dealing with real life issues, real life responsibilities, and so gaming really isn't at the top of your list unless you're in a position where you have support, whether it's support from your parents, whatever the case may be. Maybe you're still living at home, who knows? But I don't think many 25-year-olds right now are looking back and saying, oh man, I really need to get my hands on this Wii, or I need to get my hands on this 360. Really, where a lot of that attention goes is it goes towards, I would say, probably Gen 6, which would be the PlayStation 2's era, PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, and some people throw the Dreamcast in there. I throw the Dreamcast as a part of Gen 6. But for me, it still really starts at Gen 6. Yes, Gen 7 is now considered retro, but it's really not retro enough. I don't think it's retro enough for the 25-year-old, and I still don't think that folks in their 30s and 40s and even 50s, even they still don't feel like Gen 7 is retro enough. So for most people, it really genuinely starts at the sixth generation and then works its way back. And I think the main reason for that is because as you go back in time, each generation, the distinction between generations is a lot greater. And the differentiation between horsepower, graphics, different games is a lot different. Developers weren't afraid to take risks. You saw so many random and weird games. Like even the other day, I picked up a game called B-Boy. It's a breakdancing game on the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 had so many risk-taking type of games on it. It's just crazy. Probably a lot of politically incorrect games on it now. Like if you tried to make some of the games today that came out on the PlayStation 2, you'd be canceled. You'd be like, cancel culture would take you out. You wouldn't be able to play them. You wouldn't be able to advertise them or talk about them. And it was a much more free time. It feels like it was a much more open time where people were able, where developers were able to really kind of explore their imaginations. And I think a lot of these factors and more is why certain folks have the stronger affinity to retro hardware. And so, just back to the point of, it depends on who you ask when it comes to the question of, does retro hardware still matter? I do think it depends on who you ask. Because if you ask a 25-year-old, they may not care too much about it. If you ask a 45-year-old, they may care about it. They may tell you that retro gaming hardware is super important, that it needs to be preserved, that they enjoy it, and if they had the option of playing, games that are released on modern consoles, if they had their choice, a lot of them probably would want to play it on their original hardware. We've been seeing more and more and more retro games get released on modern consoles. We saw it with the Suikoden series. We're seeing it with the Lunar series. We've seen the Marvel vs. Capcom collection bringing all those amazing Marvel arcade games to modern consoles. We're seeing it with a lot of the great shoot 'em ups of the 90s. Those are being brought back to modern consoles. And we're just seeing port after port after port onto modern platforms. And I think it's great because it does open up this newer generation to certain games that they never would have heard or seen or known about had these games not been ported to modern platforms. But there's so much that's being left behind. There are so many games that are probably never going to get those types of ports due to licensing issues, due to just certain restrictions, development companies, source codes that were lost. There's a lot of things that's going to prevent this generation from being able to experience certain video games. And I think this is the reason why, if you ask an older consumer or gamer, if you ask someone that's older, they're probably going to stress the importance of original hardware. And I think, to each his own, different strokes for different folks. If you like modern software, if you like modern hardware, go for it. But if you're an old school gamer, hey, go for that too, because there's one thing that you can never beat, and it's the feeling of nostalgia. You'd be amazed what some people do just to have that feeling of nostalgia. And I think that is, as long as there's nostalgia, there will always be a market for original hardware. But let me know what you think. Do you think original hardware still matters in 2025? I'm interested to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.